What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Pitt mailbag here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. I'm Noah Hiles. He's Chris Carter. And as always, we're here to answer your questions about Pitt athletics. I normally say Pitt football, but Carter, it's basketball season. By the time everyone's watching and reading this, we'll have officially started the college basketball season. Pitt taking on Tennessee Martin Monday evening. You and I will both be there. Be sure to check out our coverage. But with that in mind, we're here to answer questions on both football and basketball. So, Chris, if it's all right with you, let's just get started.
Let's get started. We got Bill, who sent some message in. Which Pitt football players will not be able to return next year due to their eligibility having expired? And
Well,
Noah,
Bill,
that's tricky because
yeah,
with the COVID 2020 rule of everyone getting a waiver there, it's tough to remind you, like, wait, is he a redshirt senior or is he like a redshirt senior?
right. And so Bill emailed this to me, and I went and did the research here. So there are out of every senior you see on Pitt's roster, and there are a lot of them, and there are guys that you've seen around starting for some in some cases 4 years. There are only 8 guys who are out of eligibility after this season. Those 8 are Deslin Alexander, Miles Canton, Owen Drexel, Gabe Hoy, Derek Kyler, Marcus Minor, Carter Warren, and Tyler Wiltz.
John Morgan's not up?
John Morgan is not up.
I thought for sure he was going to be
No, he's not on there. Havakuk Baldonado still has another year. Servassier Dennis, Jared Wayne, Kedon Slovis. I mean, there are so many guys who have been playing college football, maybe not necessarily even at Pitt, but who have been around for a while. Shane Simon, another guy who played a long time at Notre Dame, and now it's his first year at Pitt. They can all come back next year. Now, the question is, who will come back? And we'll get into that later in this mailbag. But yeah, out of these 8, I mean, let's be real here. I mean, Carter Warren's been out for the season for a couple weeks now. Owen Drexel, Pitt's played more than half the year without him. So, and Gabe Hoy has been hurt pretty much all year. He hasn't really been, the player that he was last year as far as being relied upon to be a starter. So Marcus Minor is a loss. Deslin Alexander's a loss. A guy who had a great game Saturday, but has also been hurt this year. But I mean, Miles Canton's a backup. Derek Kyler is their 4th string quarterback. And Tyler Wiltz is a guy who, he's fun to talk to. And he's made an impact this year as a rotational guy at linebacker. But overall, I mean, they're going to return. They have the opportunity to return 10 starters on the defensive side of the ball, and close to that number on offense as well when you consider what they're starting now on the offensive line.
Yeah, that's the thing to me is that, again, we'll get into the guys who we think are going to the NFL, but, I thought that in my head the whole year I've just had, Deslin and John are gone. If Haba doesn't have a big year, I could see Haba coming back and he hasn't had a big year, unfortunately. If Haba had the numbers, if Haba had the numbers this year that he had last year, I think he'd be gone. Like there'd be no question about that. But this is something that I think Pat Narduzzi's been able to benefit from. On top of everyone talked about how he was very fortunate that Kenny Pickett could come back for a 5th season last year. I think this program has benefited from keeping guys like Eric Hallett as long as they have. Next year I expect them to have Brandon Hill back. Like and he's an important part of this defense. MJ Devonshire, Marquez Williams, David Green's going to be back. That's a lot of guys who do a lot of really good things for this team. And I think it goes well. I think it further adds to the importance for this year that they finish strong. I know a lot of people are like, well, what does it matter? They can't win the Coastal anymore. I think finishing strong sets a good tone for next year when you still have a lot of these guys, and we'll probably be seeing some younger guys come up like Elliot Donald, Ryland Gandy, Sean Fitzsimmons, and a number of other guys.
Yeah, and that's not to say, I mean, some of these guys might just call it a career as well.
True.
And there's not, I wouldn't say many of them, but there's some guys who might just be content with, all right, I played 4 or 5 years at Pitt. I've got my degree. It's time to move on. So we'll see. And Narduzzi kind of talked about this as we transition to the next question here. He was asked this afternoon, Monday afternoon, about Kedon Slovis. And he said, well, their next home game Senior Day. And we'll see who walks on Senior Day, because that traditionally means that's your last game as a Pitt Panther. So Jim wants to know, what options does Slovis have next year? The NFL isn't realistic. Would he do better in the transfer portal, or should he just stick around at Pitt? And Jim, that's a really good question. Personally, I if I'm Kedon Slovis, I would explore the transfer portal. I don't know if I'd be leaving Pitt. I do know that he probably does have a starting job here at Pitt if he wants it next year. But I don't know if Pitt's the right fit for him. Clearly, there's something going wrong with how he's being used. I don't know if him and Signetti aren't on the same page. I don't know if he just doesn't mix well with the offense or the weapons that he has to use. But maybe another change of scenery does well for Kedon Slovis. Maybe him going to a Conference USA team or an AAC team or a MAC team or a Sun Belt team could kind of get him into a rhythm, and he could put some good tape together and maybe be a third day NFL draft selection. I don't think he'll do that, though. I do expect him to be the starter next year for Pitt. We asked Pat Narduzzi about it, like I said today, and he said he hasn't had that conversation. What do you think, Chris? Do you expect Kedon to return? Is that his best option to return to Pitt next year?
I think you have to, because here's the thing: you go to another team right now, like there's no way he goes to the NFL after this. Like right now, no one's taking him seriously. He wouldn't get a real shot anywhere. He has to go somewhere where he could at least put up a strong season, and he could explore the transfer portal. But here's my thing: are you going to find another Power 5 team that wants you after what you saw this year, and that wants you and it's going to give you something to work with? Those are the things I just don't see happening unless he gets lucky. You never know. Like, I didn't think Hendon Hooker would go to the Tennessee Volunteers and light it up the way that he has for them this year.
It took him a while though, Chris. Like, he's only got one more year. He doesn't have the time to beat out a Joe Milton.
I agree. And that's what I'm saying. Like,
he's if he goes to a Power 5, he's going to Rutgers or Vanderbilt or somewhere like that, and he's just going to get stomped on by better competition. This is the best Power 5 program he could probably start at and be on a competitive team to compete for a conference tournament.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you. I'm walking people through like what it would be like if he tried to hit the transfer portal right now. No one's knocking down the door for him right now. And so your best option, get better over the spring and summer. Find a way to improve during the off season, try to get better connections with your receivers, with your tight ends, with everybody, and try to come back as a better quarterback next year. And again, this season's not over. He can become a better quarterback by the end of this season, and that would help him carry forward the next year. Because also there's no person in the wings right now. Nate Yarnell isn't exactly someone that I think is going to be taking his job right away. Now I will say Kenny Minchie said that he's coming to enroll in the spring. I will tell you guys right now, do not expect Kenny Minchie to start, to take the starting job in his first spring and summer camps.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're Slovis, you have this window of opportunity where it's like, look, they don't have anybody ready right now behind me. I'm going to just go and do this thing and kind of show that I can improve. And if he does, like if next year he comes back and he looks like a more composed quarterback, maybe he gets a late day draft pick. But right now, he ain't getting that.
Yeah, and I think that would also help with team success. If he could come back next year with the group that they have returning and Pitt, gets to the ACC championship game, that also might help his stock. But we'll move forward now. Casey asks, how many players on this Pitt team do you see getting selected in this upcoming NFL draft? And he continues, he or she, don't know the gender of Casey. I apologize for assuming. Who goes first? Yeah, I apologize.
You got us canceled. We're just like on our fourth episode.
Who goes
Way to
first
go,
in the draft for out of Pitt prospects? Israel Abanikanda or Kalijah Kancey? I'll start off by saying we don't have confirmation that either of these guys are going out for the draft. I think it's safe to assume Kancey definitely is. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if Izzy also goes. It would make a lot of sense if both of them do. Carter, I'm going to rattle off my guys real quick. I have them in 3 tiers. I have 9 guys in 3 tiers on who will get drafted. I have 3 for sure NFL draft picks, and that is Izzy, Kalijah Kancey, and Carter Warren. Those are my 3. No doubt they're getting picked. 3 probables saying, something would probably have to go wrong. It had to have a bad pro day or a bad combine for them not to get drafted. And that's Servassier Dennis, Eric Hallett, and I'll even throw Habakkuk Baldonado. I know he hasn't had a good season, but I think his measurables and his athleticism probably get him a 7th round pick. Probably, I would say. And then in the maybe category, if they were to go out this year, Deslin Alexander has to. I don't think he does, but maybe he could have a good performance in the combine and sneak in as a 7th round pick, especially if he keeps up doing what he did Saturday against Syracuse. Right. My other maybes are John Morgan, who doesn't have to go out this year, and Jared Wayne, who I think would probably be a day 3 receiver pick, but you never know with receivers. There's other guys that, you might want to take a flyer on from a lower classification or someone who's at a JUCO or whatever the case is. Receivers are a crapshoot on day 3. I could see Wayne going. I think he'll definitely get drafted if he comes back and plays another year at Pitt. But those are my guys. Chris, what do you think of my analysis? Any names I missed? Any person I overvalued or undervalued?
I don't think you really missed people. Just thinking back all the people you said. I like the idea that Carter Warren, that guy was a Senior Bowl invite last year.
Yeah.
Not just this year. So he's going to get a look. I don't know if Marcus Minor's done enough.
He might be. He's in the maybe category. I should have thrown him in there.
He's the maybe category, but I don't know if Marcus Minor's done enough to be a surefire the late day 3 pick.
Yeah.
Also, just interior offensive linemen. If you don't stand out, it's so tough. It's that's not about Marcus. That's just about the market of what interior offensive linemen go for. Jimmy Morrissey was the captain of this offensive line, of this offense. He was Kenny Pickett's brother, and he won the Burlsworth Trophy for best walk-on athlete in the country. And he was a late 6th round pick. That's what you're up against if you're an interior offensive lineman. So, I think Marcus, nothing about he's done. I think Marcus has done a fabulous job since he's been at Pitt. I think that he's really stepped up and he's become a leader, but I think that he's going to have to fight his way onto a practice squad roster in the NFL. So I like your guys for the most part. I think Deslin, like you said, his size, I think puts him in a lot of conversations. If he puts up some good number, and I'll say this too, Eric Hallett.
Yeah, did I not mention him? I think
you did. I think you did.
He's a probable.
He's a probable because I like the way that he's played this year. His instincts have been so much sharper. And if I'm an NFL coach and I see a 5'11" guy, and here's the thing, he has to test very well. But one thing that we've seen the last couple years, Damari Mathis in last year's pro day lit it up, just crushed it and raised his stock super high. The year before that, Jason Pinnock, these were guys that were good corners for Pitt, but nobody was checking for them on the national, the Draft Network and Pro Football Focus and all that. And then all of a sudden at the pro day, everyone was like, whoa, who is that guy? And I'm getting phone calls saying, Chris, you watch that guy. How good is he? And those type of things. I think Eric Hallett could be in that conversation. And I think a lot of Desmond Alexander could put himself in that conversation. But for the most part, this comes down, this draft, I think is going to come down to Kalijah Cansey, Izzy Abanikanda, and Servassier Dennis. Now, there could be guys up in here. I think Pitt in the 2021 NFL draft class had 6 guys, if I remember correctly. And that was the most that they had since 2004, I want to say. I used to do these numbers off the top of my head. But saying that is to say, I think they at least get 3, most likely 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think they're around that number too. And as far as Izzy or Cansey, I just think value-wise, Cansey probably goes.
Yeah,
I mean,
interior defensive linemen are worth a lot.
Yeah, you're going to take an All-American interior defensive lineman before a running back, even if he is also an All-American. However, I would argue that Izzy has the potential to have just as good, if not a better NFL career than Cansey, simply because of his age and his speed. I think he fits perfect in today's modern NFL game.
No, we got to do the thing before someone gets mad we didn't bring this up, but is Kalijah Cansey a future Pittsburgh Steeler? Because people are talking about it, and they need interior defensive linemen. I actually think that would be an intriguing question. I'm just not. Go ahead.
I mean, they have 2 second-round picks. It would make sense with one of them. I wouldn't mind seeing a couple former Pitt Panthers in black and gold next year. One of them currently wears red and yellow and plays in California for a team that's ranked pretty high. But I mean, we'll see. We're not going to mention his name on this mailbag. I don't want to piss off fans too much. So we move on. Jake wants to know, we won't spend a lot of time on this, but he wants to know, is Dayon Hayes suspended from the team? Will we see him play again for Pitt this year? We don't know. Simply put, we do not know if he's suspended. Pat Narduzzi issued a statement. He talked about it today. Also, he said they're handling the punishment internally. They're not going to answer a lot of questions on it. I will say he's not charged with a felony. So based upon previous instances within the athletic department, I think if an athlete is charged with a felony, that's protocol to indefinitely suspend him.
Yes.
Because this isn't a felony, he's probably not suspended. Again, that's just speculation. Narduzzi might have went ahead and just suspended him. We don't know that. But unless Chris knows something different.
Here's what it is. If Pitt has not announced that he's been publicly suspended, then he's not publicly suspended yet. No one might be right. Like he said, we are going to discipline. That the word discipline was in the statement. And I think that's what we have to pay attention to for Deion Hayes. But there's no definitive thing. I think one thing that Pitt also knows to do is like, this is unfortunate and all that stuff. But they also want to see this play out in court. And again, I'm not calling anybody a liar on either side, but I've been covering when Aaron Donald, when he was an NFL player, was accused of beating someone up, and then it turned out that he actually saved that person's life. So I'm not saying that Deion Hayes is or isn't innocent. I'm just saying Pitt kind of knows, the people at Pitt, they know how this stuff goes. You can hear one thing, it could be absolutely true. You can hear another thing, and it'd be completely false. You just got to let the system play out. But like Noah said, if there's no felony, they might do like a just this week thing until they sort things out. And then I think he will be back at some point this season.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just a Narduzzi call or just, hey man, you're benched for the end of the year. It's not like they're playing for anything spectacular now either. It might not even be worth the PR to play him this season. Just, hey, you're done for the season. It's not like a suspension. You can continue to practice, but we're not going to dress you. We're not going to play you. You're done for this year. And it is what it is, but just rest up. He was injured to begin this year anyway. So it might just be the better decision. Again, that's just speculation. We can move forward now. We got a couple basketball questions here. This one comes from George. What are your expectations for the Pitt basketball team this year? What will be their overall record? Where will they finish in the ACC standings? So we were actually asked this by a guy named George, who writes for
our man George.
Yeah, so that's actually what this question comes from. This wasn't submitted, but Pittsburgh Sports Now does a media poll every year where they go around and ask the local media, what their predictions were. And we can go ahead and say ours. Chris, you want to start with yours?
Yeah, I think mine was 18 wins.
Yeah,
I think, the reason I went with that is that I actually think that this, I actually think that this Pitt basketball team has a lot more potential than we've seen in a while. And I look at how they've assembled this roster. 18-13. I just pulled it up to make sure I was being consistent with what I said. 18-13 all overall, 11-9 in the conference. The thing is they got scores, man. And there were so many times last year that if somebody, just anybody, could have hit a shot, it would have woke up the team and got them out of their funk. They got a few guys that I think could do that. Blake Hinson, I think, could do that. Greg Elliott, I think, could do that. Nelly Cummings, he's not a deep shot guy, but he could create points. Jamarius Burton has been that guy, but the problem was that he was like the only guy who could do that last year. And then, so you got those four guys, and then you're hoping you get John Hughley back. Now, this is also predicated on John Hughley returning at some point by, conference play with that. We're supposed to hear about that officially soon from Jeff Capel, I believe.
Yeah, I'll say mine. I think I was one game beneath here, so 17-14 overall. I think they have a strong non-conference. Actually, I think I said there are only two non-conference losses that I picked were against West Virginia and Michigan, which will be games 2 and 3 on their non-conference slate. But I think they'll win the second game in Brooklyn, either against Arizona State or VCU. I like them against Vanderbilt, and I like them against Northwestern, which are their two other big non-conference games. And then in the ACC, I have them finishing 10th at 8-12. I think 17-14 plus a couple of wins in the ACC tournament. We'll say 2. And then they obviously lose. So that's 19-15. That gets them into the NIT, which would be a win considering where this program's been. Be their first winning season since Jamie Dixon, and first postseason in a while too. So that would be big. And our final question comes from Byron. What newcomer to Jeff Capel's team will have the biggest impact this season? Well, Byron, hopefully we'll have a better idea after Monday night's game, which we're recording a couple hours prior to. But I'm going to go ahead. I'll start with Blake Hinson. I loved what I saw from him in the preseason. He led the Panthers in scoring in both games, 20 points against Clarion, 29 against Edinburgh, and 28 of that came in the first half. So I think he's their best shooter. As Carter mentioned, there are some other guys too. I think Greg Elliott's going to be a really reliable outside shooter, and I think Nelly Cummings is going to be the MVP of this team as far as producing points and giving consistency to an offense. He fills a void that's existed for a long time with having a true traditional point guard. But this team's needed a scorer more than anything, someone who can go get a bucket from anywhere on the floor, not just in the paint. And Hinson can be that guy. So he's my pick. Carter, who do you got?
I mean, I think you picked the guy. It's Blake Hinson. And we could say Nelly Cummings, but I think Nelly Cummings is going to be more of a facilitator this year. And I think Blake Hinson is going to be the scorer. I think he's going to be the guy that, when it's time to go ISO, he's the guy that gets the ISO. And he's going to get a chance to go. He's 6'7". He can move. He can drive. He can defend. He can shoot. I think he has that full package of a guy. I'm not saying, I want to preface this, I'm not saying that he is Justin Champagnie, but I think that he fits the kind of the role of a guy that has good length, can shoot, can attack the basketball.
I see him more as a Sam Young.
I think that's a good comparison too. I'm just comparing him to Jeff Capel.
To guys. Jeff Capel era players. That's
I think Sam Young's a very good comparison. But I'm just saying, as far as having a three, a guy who could come in, have good size, challenge guys, and be kind of a power forward, but also be a scorer and also kind of operate on the wings a little bit. I think that's who Blake Hinson is. And if he's that effective as a scorer, I think it does so much for this Pitt team, because they desperately missed a Justin Champagnie presence last year. I think that's who he is, and I think that's what they get. But like you said, I think Nelly's a good facilitator. I think he's going to be a big impact there. Greg Elliott brings the outside shot. But I'm really one guy I'll say that people are overlooking. I think Fede Federico is going to be a bigger role for this team than people originally thought, especially with John Hughley out. I liked his interior presence in the scrimmages that we saw. I liked his interior presence in the practices we saw. I'm not sure if that'll translate to doing it well against other D1 competition, but I think right now he has good length at 6'11". He knows how to use his size, and he can be a big body in the paint. They need somebody to do that while John's gone. And even when John's back, they need another presence to take that on when John needs to come out, because John's going to get in foul trouble a couple games. It happened last year when he was in foul trouble. Pitt just went to like five guard, offense, and it was not a good look. So I think he's another guy to look out for.
All right. Well, that's all we got from you guys today. We appreciate, as always, everyone reaching out and asking questions. You can hit us up with questions for next week in our emails and on our Twitter accounts, which will be listed in the online version of this at the Post-Gazette's website. For Chris, I'm Noah, saying we'll see you again soon.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.